the glorious, dangerous Hannibal, the vengeance of Carthage, crossing the frozen Alps with his army and his train of elephants. It's quite a grand image, isn't it? Something that strikes fear into Roman boys even now, I hope, before they ever see a real battlefield. But trust my word on this, dear listener. What I remember most is the biting cold, the sheer cliffs, and the last sounds of men and beasts falling headlong into the deep. We bled for every step of that mountain pass. But the ultimate prize lay ahead, and my Carthaginians suffered everything in the name of our nation's honor. We would destroy our ancient enemy, the corrupt and treacherous Rome. Take it from me, the tale of how we battled our way through those mountains against a different kind of foe. After all, I was there. You should know that my father, Hamilcar of our proud clan the Barca, was a mighty general in the army of Carthage, and, as the well-known story goes, he raised me up from my first years to hate the people of Rome, our nation's deadly enemy. My father served honorably in the first war we fought against the Romans, and after we lost that war against their treachery, I set my sights on following his path, training and studying the arts of war all through my youth, hoping to one day deliver Carthaginian revenge. My talents were noticed, and I rose quickly through the ranks of our soldiers. And then the time came to fulfill my dream, arriving in Spanish Iberia at the head of an army, subduing lands and people for Carthage, until I laid siege to a city called Saguntum, on land that should have been ours by treaty, but the Romans claimed as their own. Predictably, Rome couldn't endure victory over their supposed friends in Saguntum, and the second war between my nation and theirs began. My destiny was so clear in that moment, and my dream of raising Carthage to glory felt within my reach. It began at the foot of the mountains, the realization of that dream. Sailing my forces across the sea to Italy would have been an easy route, easy for my enemies to foresee my plans and stop me. What lay ahead over land was a much fiercer path, but one that would grant us every advantage if only we could see it through. The towering Alps sundered the Roman heartland of Italy from Gaul and Iberia, and many foes of Rome among the Gauls dwelt at the northern pass into Italian land. Bringing my army across those jagged peaks, descending into Italy from their unexpected northern frontier, and allying with tribes hostile to the Romans along the way. This was my plan. A bold plan across the most perilous of roads. It would be the stuff of legends. And so the great work began. My forces were camped atop a plain, and I sent forward some scouts to reconnoiter the pass that we would traverse into the mountains. I did not trust the chieftains of this place to simply leave us alone, and my distrust was well-founded. They had their warriors waiting at the pass hidden from our sight, waiting for our approach to ambush us from the shadows. And yet every night at sundown they would disperse back to their homes, abandoning the ridgeline for us to advance. The fools. I myself led a group, lightly armed, into the pass in the dead of night. We took care to dig in further up to hide our presence from the tribesmen, and waited. Sure enough, the tribe returned the next day under the new sun, assuming the same position as they had the last few times. As commanded, the rest of my army proceeded from our camp to the pass and tried again to break through the attack of the tribesmen. Battle swiftly ensued, and my army lost its formation, losing several followers and soldiers and pack animals down the steep cliffside. But soon after, I came charging down with my infantry from the rear, causing the enemies to scatter in fear, and my own army to rally and regain their order at our sight. We advanced and gave no mercy to the tribesmen, who soon broke rank and raced back to their hovels. Soon we came across the fortified village of that tribe, and captured it, and seized their cattle and grain, enough to last us 3 days in the mountains. Our first challenge was won, but it was far from the last. My army traveled uneventfully for 3 days, and we made fine progress. But the next group of tribesmen was more clever than I anticipated. They sent elders disguised as envoys to me, and declared themselves as friends to Carthage and her soldiers. They offered supplies and guides for our journey through the mountains, and to gain our trust, offered us some of their people as hostages. But I wasn't completely trusting, and still kept my men in tight order, as if we were in enemy territory, which indeed we were. I put the cavalry and elephants at the head of the column, and stationed myself with my hand-picked infantry at the rear of it, so I could keep an eye out behind us as we marched. Before very long on the path, we came across a narrow track, a steep cliff almost like a wall to one side of us, and a sheer drop into the chasm on the other. That is when they struck us from front and back out of their places of hiding, appearing like spirits out of nowhere. I wheeled my soldiers in the rear around to face the oncoming warriors, who clashed against us like a human tide, swords and spears biting into shields and flesh alike. It was clear this is where their main force was attacking, and if my troops and I hadn't been there ready, we would have been devastated there in that pass. They rolled great stones and hurled stakes into our lines from the ridges above. My troops held the line for an entire night, our column split in half by a flanking maneuver from the mountain men. I and my troops were cut off from our baggage train and horsemen. At the cost of many lives, both men and pack animals, we held them back with a wall of arms and stout shields throughout the night, and slaughtered countless of them all through the darkness and into the early morning. Finally, there was a lull in the combat, and we reformed our two halves together again and pushed through the dangerous path. After we dispersed the mountain men in force, they stuck to the tactics of ambush, making raids on the forward and rear parts of the column when they could. The elephants in our train both hindered and helped us. Getting them through the paths already treacherous for men and horses slowed our movement, but at the same time they struck fear into the raiders, who had never seen such creatures before. Now we soon found ourselves bewildered by the terrain, taking the wrong paths either because our guides were deceiving us, or a valley would trick us into thinking we had found a new route for better passage, which proved false. On the 9th day, we rested at the summit, tired from the fighting and climbing. And there we stayed for 2 days, and by some luck, some of the pack animals that we had thought lost returned to us by following our tracks along the mountainside. All the same, more troubles lay ahead. The Pleiades were setting, and soon the snows came. The next morning we resumed our march, but the exhaustion of my men was clear in their worn faces and slow steps. And so I rode ahead of them, up to a high place where all the land of Italy, our prize, lay outstretched far below us. I reminded them that at that very moment they were breaching the gates of Italy. They were even now trampling over the broken walls of hateful Rome. And I gave them courage, that the hard upward climb was behind them, and once we descended, just a few battles would deliver the might of the Romans into their very hands. Their hearts were rekindled, and our column went on for 2 days with no more challenges from the mountain tribes. But the descent down into Italian land was shorter, and thus even steeper, going down than our longer path of ascent had been. The track was every step perilous, slippery. A slip meant a fall a slide, indescribable confusion of men and beasts stumbling and slipping among one another. Soon we came across a vast cliff, so sheer that even a lightly armed soldier could hardly find a way down by clinging to stumps and bushes in the rocks. My cavalry had called a halt, sending a messenger to me that they could no longer proceed. I arrived at the front of the column to see that they were correct, as the narrow pass, already a dangerous road, had been ruined by a landslide. And so we tried to detour over the trackless slopes around us, never attempted before. This was near unbearable, as the snow had been packed down into ice, and caused the men to slip and fall, their own hands and those of their comrades proving unhelpful, as they too would slide on the ice. There was no stable place to find anchor there, not even bushes to grasp onto, and the weight of the pack mules caused them to break through the ice and raise a terrible struggle trying to get free. I soon realized that this was to no avail, as the crawling men were wearing themselves out along the trail. I had them haul away snow to pitch a camp in that place, and after camp was made, I had them start a new path to somehow take us down the mountainside amid that dreadful cold. What prevented us there was solid rock blocking our way, and it was only through that rock that the army's path could go on. But we soon found a brilliant solution that harnessed the power of heat and liquid to break through the barriers. We toiled at chopping down trees and hauling them to the site where the rock face lay, piling up the timbers into a massive heap and setting them aflame with the help of the mountain wind. When the rocks were simmering with heat, my men flung their rations of sour wine against it, and the moisture caused the impenetrable rock face to fracture and break before our very eyes. A marvel it was. Once the rocks were cleared, the men set to work with pick and shovel to forge a path of switchbacks down the mountainside, enough for our men and beasts, even the great elephants that remained, to descend. But the labor was slow, and we spent 4 whole days on this task. Nothing grew on these desolate peaks, and in this last push of our long journey, many of the animals came near to dying of starvation. When the path was cleared, after that 4th day, we were blessed as we descended ever further down from the Alps into green lands with flowing waters. Gone were the driving snows and howling winds and dark, deserted cliffs. Finding ourselves in such abundance, our great task finished, and the way open before us to even greater glory, we rested for 3 days. And when we resumed southward, our enemy Rome lay far ahead, but we strode through a gentler land, with more welcoming tribes to meet us. I remember those days well, when the treacherous Alps rose at our back, and the heartland of the Romans stretched forth ahead of us. It was time to increase our strength with alliances among Rome's foes on her frontiers, and then soon to meet the armies the Romans would send against me. But those, I suppose, are tales for another time. Let any who would test the Alps after me remember that it was Carthage and Hannibal and the army of Hannibal that accomplished this feat, and what losses we suffered, and pain we endured, and what would finally become of our grand expedition against the Romans, let it all pale beneath the legend of our great crossing.